Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome, friends, to the next chapter with Charlie. I'm here with my guest, Ahmet Bozer, and Ahmet is the author of a new book, Soldiery, that's short for Soul Surgery. And in this, he writes about the book, as external pressures mount, we instinctively look outward for relief, turning to quick fixes or external resolution or external validation. Yet in doing so, we overlook the one source of resilience always within our reach. That is our inner self, where the ability to grow, adapt, and find fulfillment resides. And then he continues, and I'm loving this. The real challenge is sustaining this connection in a natural way and harnessing the power of our inner self to thrive. And so today, Ahmet Bozer and I will discuss harnessing the power of the inner self to thrive. With that, let's welcome him on the show. Ahmet Bozer, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited. You know, your book is fascinating, and as we have chatted and as I've read through, I can't wait to talk to you now. Now, before we get on to soldiery, you have what I called an exhausting resume at the highest levels of leadership. That is president and chairman, and of your influence at Coca-Cola. Tell me about your role at Coca-Cola.
My last role at Coke was president of Coke International, where I had responsibility for all geographies with the exception of North America. And I've arrived at that position with successively larger geographic responsibilities, starting from Turkey, going to Middle East, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, India, and then eventually having responsibility for Coke International. And then I retired from that position.
Was that fun? Did you like that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, my first international trip was when I was probably 10 years old. My parents took me to Geneva, Switzerland, and I was all by myself. And I had a little atlas with me. And during that trip, I memorized the capitals of every single country in the world. So from that,
Well, that tells me something right there. How you were 10 years old and you memorized the capitals of every country.
for whatever reason, I've always been attracted to, global affairs or global business, and I became a business person by education, and I had to become global, and Coke was the perfect place to experience that.
Oh yeah. Did you think that when you took a job there? Were you
When
thinking
I
that
my
global, did that
first
occur later?
when I first joined Coke in Coke USA, I was in Atlanta at that time.
Uh-huh.
Because it was an international company, I had in my mind that maybe one day they will ship me back to Turkey, where I was born and where
Right.
I lived until I was 21 years old. And
Okay.
then that happened. I really, at that time, I didn't have a vision beyond that. But because of all the changes in the world, how the world has transformed with the collapse of the Soviet Union and new countries emerging,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Coke business, giving empowerment to the local people, I had the chance to expand my geographic responsibility, and the rest has happened pretty much as part of the global events and changes in Coke. And I was there in the right time, at the right place. But I guess I've also done a decent job so that they kept promoting me.
They kept promoting, so if you did a good job, yeah. Yeah, that's I was a consultant for a number of years, and people will say, what is what kind of marketing do you do? And I said, do a good job. I
Yeah.
said, I did no marketing. It was all, it was just me and my business. And I did that for 30 years. And and it's just you do a good job, you get referred. I was never I never created a marketing piece. I think maybe I did early on. I thought, oh, I've got to have these marketing materials, and I never used them.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything was referral.
yeah. I'm like you. Yeah, first make sure you do your job well. Yeah, marketing helps. It comes on top of it, but if there's marketing without the substance, that's not sustainable, obviously.
It doesn't last long. So
Yeah.
you were in the corporate fire and all of the fun and activity that goes on corporate. So it's very, very external. Um, what led you to wrestle with the subject of harnessing the power of the inner self? How did the
Yeah.
inner self emerge in all of that?
Yeah. Well, I had a conviction that as a leader, first of all, I think every business is a people business, right? Coke can today, you can strip all the assets away from it, but the great team that they have can rebuild it. So it's really the people who do it. So if you're in a leadership role of a people business, um, a commonsensical thing to uphold is that if you allow people to thrive in their roles and flourish and collaborate well with each other, business is going to do well. So I've seen people development as the key driver for success. That was my philosophy of leadership. So, and then,
That's not uncommon now today, but
Mhm.
that was hugely uncommon when you were in leadership 2 decades ago.
Yeah, I
Where did
think
you come up with that?
well, everybody knows this, but doing it is something else. So, because you always have pressures of the day and you have to get the task done, and there's
Right.
always a trade-off between the task and the people side of the business. It just takes focus, time, and effort to sort of try to see it holistically and make sure that people development part is not ignored. So, because that was one thing, I was always so my interest in developing people, starting with myself, didn't start after I left Coke. It started while I was there for a long time. Then I also have a sort of a philosophical streak to what I do. I always look for what's the right philosophy here, and I've bought into the fact that everything really starts from within, for myself and for others, because that's when habits become ingrained. That's when the change happens inside, it happens naturally in the outside. That's the
Right.
formula for growth and development that I subscribe to. And then that starts with who? That starts with me. I can't, I have to be a role model to others as someone who leads from within. And so during my leadership role, that's how I try to manage my own development and my own performance. I've always focused in like, what was I thinking there? What is my mental model here? Why did I have such an emotional reaction to this? How can I control these emotions? So I was asking myself these questions all the time. So when I left Coke, I think in a very systemic way, I think when you figure out the system for something, then you can become better at it by following that system. So then I said to myself, I'm actually going to develop the system of how you focus on your inner self um, now that I have time, now that I'm not working in executive life. So that's how sort of I transitioned from a practitioner of that at Coke to a developer of a system for it. And Soldry is that system.
Wonderful. So, first, the first thing you did, and you did this by nature, and I don't think a lot of leaders really understand this, but it seems to me that the primary means for you to to bring up these ideas of the inner self and what's going on was for you to model that. It was not done in lecture, it was done in modeling. They could tell that you were in your within yourself, going interior and working on different issues. Is that right?
Yes, I mean that's I try to make that my mode of operation. And what does that take? That really takes self-reflection time. So taking quality time to reflect on um, some event you must have gone through that was tough, and turning inward. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? How did I manage? How can I improve? So if you make a habit of this, that's all it takes.
Yeah. But that is it. You have this blend. I'm noticing in our conversation here really quickly. You
Hmm.
have this combination, this interplay between logic and intuitive, logic and the gut. You will go to logic to formulate a thesis, but then it seems like you go with gut to understand the interior. Is that am I observing that correctly? That's just a quick observation.
Um, it is, and I maybe the way I express that in this model is, we are four-dimensional beings. Like my
Oh,
theory is right. So we have our physical dimension, our intellectual dimension, emotional dimension, and we also have, I believe, a spiritual dimension. Now, when we bring our whole self into an experience, you know, naturally, some people are very rational. Some people are very emotional. But I've tried, what does it mean to bring your whole self into your experience? What does it mean to keep yourself open to spirituality? What do you do with your emotions? So I've been thinking about those. And yes, so I try to engage with all of my dimensions. Now, spirituality is something else. It's not like you can't engage spirituality every single moment. That's not what I'm saying. But at least you can have your physical self, your intellectual self, and emotional self all tuned in. That you're tuning into all of that in your conversations, in engaging with um, any issue. So yes, I try to do that, and the gut, whatever we call it, instinct, gut feeling, um,
heart.
heart, spirituality, whatever. Those are the things that we know is right, but we can't express why it's right. And when you have that feeling, yeah, sometimes I go with it.
I love it. I'm very fond of hemispheric brain thinking, of
Mm-hmm.
left and right brain. And, the left
Mm-hmm.
brain is very logical, the right brain is more heart. And, and I am not unlike you, maybe not quite as logical. I may go to the heart a little bit quicker, but I'm pretty logical. I'm very keen on, on thought and intellect. And what I do is I feel at all moments, when you say, how do you go with the gut? I feel at all moments as I am in the decision making process because I believe strongly that the gut is the bottom line arbiter in decision making, yet the gut is not informed. See, you and I both, with our logic, inform our gut with logic. So our all the information that we get logically and intellectually, that goes into the gut. And then, but at that point, I don't listen to that part of the argument. I almost kind of dismiss that and then just go with my gut.
Hmm. Well, maybe you're right. Who knows? Who knows? But, I agree with you that some of the more important, bigger decisions we make in our lives, they're always surrounded with ambiguity and uncertainty.
Right.
Uh, and yes, you can do some level of analysis and research and look at your options and think logically about it. But I agree with you that in the end, Your gut makes the call. The question is, do we know how to listen to our gut? Sometimes we can confuse different feelings with a gut feeling too. So I try to bring to my decisions, both the art side. I call the gut the art side of decision making, and the
Okay, okay,
science
okay.
side. It is both. It's a combination of art and science, and I think we need to do both.
I
But
agree.
agree that in some of our decisions where there's much more ambiguity, probably the final call is made by the gut.
Yeah, that's funny. I just had, before I talked to you, I had a long conversation with my son who is he's got 10 years in professional baseball. So
Wow.
he's entering the fall of his career. And, after 10 years, you're not quite sure what happens to you play. He's actually got, he's minus to get vetted by baseball, the league. He needs 6 days. So he has to play next year. He has to play 6 days. So he is an official 10-year vet and he gets all of the entitlements that come along with being a vet. But so he's got to play another year. So he has to play, because most teams, very few teams are going to take you for one
Hmm.
week. Although, he's very well liked in the field. So he would probably find something. But it was funny. We were talking the logic of so many things, and he really deals in the logic. And he's kind of wrestling right now with a lot of things, and he's sort of entering this phase of options, confusion
Hmm.
and options.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was pointing out that, son, eventually this is not going to be a logical. You have to feed logic into the whole equation, but this is not going to be a logical x plus y equals. And it's not it's more like an x plus y may mean, and the gut is going to make its determination of what that is. And we were talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
role, and he really identified.
That's wonderful. I sympathize with that a lot. I also think, I guess when I look back at my experiences around my 30s, I did, I do remember making a gut-based decision, but it has to sort of come with experience too, a little bit, huh?
Oh
So,
yes, oh
yeah,
yes.
we'll struggle with it in earlier ages, but if we just know to listen to it over time, we're going to become much better decision makers because we learned how to listen to it.
You write a question in some of the things I read about you that says, wondering what is the power of going with the gut, even when your logic may tell you otherwise. How do you know? How do you know when to go with the gut when logic is leading you otherwise?
You know, the only answer I can give to that is So,
I love it.
it's like, but it is, I don't know how else to explain it. And there has been cases where if you really listen to yourself, if you maybe one thing you can do is like when you do all your analysis, your rational, your research, and all of that, don't let that create such a cloud in your brain that you're blocking any external guidance you can get from wherever. Because gut is maybe it's inside you, but it's beyond your control. We have to open ourselves up to what's beyond our control to inform us. When we keep so busy and so convinced of this rational side, we close up to it. Maybe all we can do is just to open up to it. And opening up to it means managing your thoughts so that they're not captivating you. You keep a healthy distance between yourself and your thoughts. You keep an open mind, and you're patient. You know when you have to make a decision. Sort of be okay with the ongoing process, that there is no closure now. Maybe there doesn't have to be a closure now. It's all these things, having this mindset. And then it's really not within our control. Sometimes your gut doesn't tell you anything. Sometimes they don't. It's like it's not in our control. But when it happens, you know.
You
That's all I can
know,
say. Yes.
I love that. I think that is so true. Is that simply it's
Yeah.
inexplicable,
Yeah.
and it has to be in the world that it sounds to me as we're talking. There's a strong spiritual element to this at the same time. You talk
Mhm.
about spirituality. What do you mean by spirituality?
So, this is something each of us define, but I define it as when I say we have a spiritual dimension, I mean we have the ability to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And when that connection happens, we actually relinquish control to that something bigger. And that brings out the best in us. So we have that capacity. But, in order to experience that, yes, you can do it during meditation. You can do it, maybe when you're having a prayer or something like that. How about everyday life? Is spirituality not present in everyday life? My theory is it is, and I'll give you an example. Um, when you feel inspired, when you have an intuitive insight, when you're imagining, is there not some part of your spiritual dimension at work when those things are happening? So, the way I see living that is when that experience happens, when you really feel inspired, inwardly express your gratefulness for that you're grateful that that has happened. The fact that you're paying attention to that feeling of yours, the fact that you're being grateful for it, you are inviting it into your life more and more. So it's like keeping your antennas open for that. And when you have it, say thank you. And that's it. Move on and just have have a pleasant smile, and don't treat it as if it's a big deal. It's part of everyday life. And if you just this is my way of trying to experience this. Um, do this once a week. Do this once every other week, but do it repeatedly. You're opening yourself up to the spiritual dimension when you do that.
I love it. I have I don't want to say unique, but I have a particular view of spirituality that, it is everything, so that's not particular, that's very common. Spirituality, do I believe in a higher power? And yeah, absolutely. In my life, that is very prevalent, that is very strong, but it goes beyond that. And it goes beyond that this higher power created everything. And in everything is the beauty, is the thing to be grateful for. And so when you were talking about, you reminded me something you were talking about reminded me of those aha moments, those discovery moments. Those, you know what I'm now preaching to my local audience, which is family and have to put up with this stuff. Um, is that it is resident within us. It is in our internal core. It is part of the way we are created. But there are so many, all truth is already in me. I
Mhm.
just have not confronted it yet. I have not. So when I have an aha, it is not a discovery, it's a reminder of a truth already extant in my soul and in my
Mhm.
heart. So it's already here. So I'm valuing, I'm just, I value the ability to acknowledge something new and something fresh.
Absolutely. I view it exactly the same way.
Oh, do
Um,
you?
I do. I do. Um, the only thing is, I'd like to talk about this in a way so that I'm not imposing my spiritual or my belief system onto others. So I'm trying to talk about it more like in an everyday sense. But what you've said um, is pretty much what I believe.
Yeah. You know, this may be a different topic, but I'm really curious of your. It's related, but not. But I'm curious of your take on this. That I have read somewhere, and the great spiritual teachers that I pay a lot of attention to the mystics, especially I did a deep dive into the late medieval Christian mystics, and that is pretty much my faith tradition now, is a tradition of mysticism. And and I have read that the opposite of faith is not doubt, it is certainty.
Wow.
And I think that is a profound statement, because in order to have faith, there must be an open-endedness. If it's a closed circuit, if it's a closed container, it can't contain faith. What do you think the opposite of is not doubt, but certainty?
That's an extremely profound statement. And
How is it?
I absolutely believe in that because let's say you have a certain religious inclination. If
Mm-hmm.
you, let's say, whatever religion it is, and that
Mm-hmm.
religion has a book,
Mm-hmm.
if you read that book with certainty that everything in it must be right the way it's said, um, versus having faith that on the origins of that religion, but really looking at the message in a way to internalize it, to understand it, to question it, and always remain open to, different interpretations of it.
Right.
You build stronger faith that way than if you had a certainty about it, because otherwise, it once you're certain about it, you really haven't made it your own by
Oh,
questioning
that's beautiful. That's great. Great. If you're certain you have not made it your own, you've just,
likely, most likely. If you've sort of reached that certainty so soon
yes.
that you haven't gone through the doubting and questioning and doubting and questioning, and you're persistently, engaging with it. If you've reached certainty before that, it hasn't become your own. And, it doesn't become your belief system when you agree with it. It becomes your belief system when you live it. And if it's not internalized, how do you live it?
I love that. That's perfect. Boy, for someone who's just heard this concept for the first time, you're explaining it better than most. Uh, I certainly concur. Let's go on to, you're talking about living it. There's, I, I was reading on Soldiery's model, and that
Mhm.
there are three core pillars that form an interconnected framework that helps individuals understand. And there were 3 points I'd like to understand: who you are, how you present yourself to the world, and how you can grow with clarity, purpose, and lasting impact. That's worthy of a book right there, and you wrote the book on that. I think those are beautiful. Who you are, how you present yourself to the world, and how you grow. Um,
Mhm.
that is, that's true with spirituality, with everyday life. Um, Tell me what you mean by those three pillars.
Yeah, yeah,
I love those pillars.
yeah. So, first of all, soldiery is anchored on a very clear definition of growth. And that is that as a human being, this is growing as a human being, you
Hmm.
become increasingly capable, impactful, and resilient. That's what growth means. So, for
Well,
soldiery,
let me ponder that. Capable, impactful, and resilient.
resilient. So capability is you have all this capability, but if you don't make a positive impact with that, it's not a full story. But life ain't easy, right? So we're always going to be tested with adversities and difficulties. So resilience is also very important. So if you have these three things that you are progressing in each one of them for the rest of your life, you're becoming more capable, impactful, and resilient. That's the growth journey. That's how Soldry views it. Then the question comes down to, okay, what is a human being? That's one of those pillars that you mentioned. So I've developed this thing called a self map. What makes up a human being? I've already briefly talked to you about our core being a four-dimensional self with our physical, emotional. But then, we have what I call human equity. The love we hold in our hearts, that's human equity. The wisdom we gain about life and about ourselves, our character. So let me not, I mean, if you're interested, I can tell you the whole self map, but because the model has so many parts, I don't want to take too long. We can go into any area that you want to go into. So there's the definition of growth. Then there is the definition of what is a human being? What is the whole self? Then the final question is, what are my core beliefs about what makes the biggest difference to your growth in that definition? What grows you most? And I've defined 4 core beliefs. For each of these core beliefs, I have acts of growth. So if you take those acts of growth, you will make that whole self in the self map become more capable, impactful, and resilient. And basically, if you want me to, I can tell you what those
Sure,
core beliefs are.
sure.
And if you want to go into the details of the self map, we can also do that. So the core beliefs are, first one is, and by the way, every one of us, you may be farther ahead in an area from me, but that doesn't make a huge difference. What makes the biggest difference is making consistent progress in each of these areas that I'm going to mention now. So it
Okay.
assumes that every human being has the capacity to do this. Every human being has the
Right.
capacity to grow. So
Love
the
it.
first one is being able to draw inspiration from life itself. So that goes with, do you have an open heart? And are you able to harvest wisdom from your experiences? And an open heart and wisdom gained with it, it lifts your consciousness to a level where you may get curious about life's existential questions and get into philosophy. So that's the first corridor. Like, are you able to draw inspiration from life? And Soldry explains a way to do that. Second one is focusing first on the impact you make. We live in a world where we're all saying what's in it for me, which is understandable. But, the impact we make on others and events actually are inextricably linked with our own fulfillment and success in life. But we're not able to give our full attention to the impact we make on others. So this second belief, to the extent we're able to focus first on our impact, we're going to grow more. Then the third belief is about pursuit of excellence in every life role, as a coach, as a podcaster, as a business professional, as a husband, father, child, friend. In every role we play, pursuing excellence in performance. That's the third one. And the fourth one is, approaching the challenges that life throws your way with a growth mindset. So basically, the book is about these 4 acts of growth, and it explains in detail how we can go about doing each one of those. And then it just grounds itself on this self map. And each of these 4 acts touch different parts of the self map and grows it.
I love it. Boy, it sounds really logical. That's put together very well.
Mhm.
Um, I'm I'm curious. I'm curious, how does one access how do we find access to answers of those four questions? Those four areas that began with, which I'm stuck on draw wisdom from life itself. I just think
Hmm.
that's magnificent. But how do we how do
Go
you how
about.
do you help how do you help your people make this tangible, make this not philosophical, make this part of their everyday life?
Yeah, great question. So the formula I talk about in soldiery is this. Um, you may be born into a very intellectual family and like you're surrounded with wise people. That's all good. But what really makes the biggest difference in growing your wisdom is, have you made continuous learning a part of how you operate day in and day out? How do you make continuous learning a part of operate? First pillar of that is something very basic: your ability to understand things. There's this wonderful quote by Elias Canetti. I use it in the book. He says, understanding, as we understand it, is misunderstanding. So at any point in time when we're engaged, our understanding is never perfect. So we can always improve our ability to understand by focusing on three skills: active listening,
Mm-hmm.
asking good questions, and I call thinking big, deep, and long. Being able to think about the bigger picture of what you're experiencing, being able to think about the deeper cause and effect relationships in what's happening, and being able to think about what has happened here over time. So the time dimension, that's the big, deep, and long. So active listening, building your questioning skills, which is very important. I think we are all trained to give answers, not to ask good questions. Building your questioning skills and practicing big, long, and deep thinking gives you a more accurate story of your experiences. So you improve your understanding that way. But that's one part of continuous learning. You build that to be ever better. Second one is humility. You know, if you have humility, you're always open to learning new things, and that fuels continuous learning. And then the other one is curiosity. So my theory is that
It's funny.
each
I was
one
just
of
going
us,
to ask, what is the role of curiosity? I can't
there we
believe you
go.
put that in
There
there
we go.
because I was just going to ask, what is the role of
Yeah.
curiosity in all
So
this?
it's
So tell me.
pursuing deep understanding, maintaining humility, and cultivating curiosity. And in the book, I give examples of how we can do that to ourselves, how we can cultivate these things within ourselves. When it comes to skills, it's about practice. So if you're going to have an important conversation, practice active listening. Keep practicing it. You're going to get better at it. Then after your practice, reflect on it. How did I do? Seek feedback. And don't expect perfection. There's never going to be perfection. But have you
Mm-hmm.
listened better than you have before? Have I improved? So that's the main idea of building the skills. And things like humility, those are about self-honesty. Are you willing to be honest with yourself? And when you evaluate yourself on an interaction, we know when we look inside when we've been arrogant. We know when we've thought of,
Oh, yeah.
saw ourselves as superior to someone. We all know that. Just with self-honesty, we can do that. So it's this continuous learning is one part of harvesting wisdom, and then the other part is I call it unraveling life's causalities.
Mm.
So wisdom at the end of the day is that you know how life works. That's wisdom, right? In simple words. If you really know how life works, you're a wise person. So to figure out how life works, you have to look for the causalities, the cause and effect relationships in life. And these cause and effect relationships, sometimes it could be on an individual to individual basis, but it could be on a macro level. How, there may be like common patterns and themes that govern things. So with life, as you gain experience, you do all the things we've talked about, you begin seeing patterns in how things work. So
Right.
I give an example of that, but I'll cut it short here. So the combination of that continuous learning and a constant effort on unraveling life's causalities, which has to do with your associating skills. Are you able to associate seemingly dissimilar things? Are you able to zoom out and look at things from a higher vantage point? So, as you build those skills and make continuous learning part of your everyday life, you will build wisdom. You will harvest wisdom from your experiences.
I'm thinking, I love that. I love all of that. Boy, you are indeed wise. I am thinking for our listeners, and I'm thinking the way I manage my life. I manage my life on the scale that you're talking about, largely by writing. It begins with writing. I write my core pillars, my personal core pillars, and then I write actions, and I write sort of activities that I can do that will concretize my actions. How do people, so writing, I have boatloads of writing. I write voraciously. What do people who are not, do you agree that writing is a major part of it or a helpful part of it?
Absolutely. And I've have my moments where my writings solidify my self-reflection.
Oh, absolutely.
Self-reflection is great, but if I actually write it down, wow, then I've really solidified that learning.
Do you know I write every morning? I journal every day, and
Wow,
I do not journal my activities. I journal my thoughts. It's just
wonderful.
it's a thought journal because I could care less about activities. I don't want to go back and read a journal that says I did this today. Well, that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
interesting, but I was thinking this today, and this is where I was moving,
Mhm.
and and that guides me. But what about people? You know what I'm wondering, Ahmet? Because I come across frequently people who don't like to write.
Mhm.
What advice do you give people who don't like to write in coming to conclusions on these deep and worthy subjects?
You know, if I write a second version of my book, I'm going to include writing because I should have. But I said two things as building a habit of two things. One was self reflection. To me, writing solidifies that self
Oh
reflection.
my goodness.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, one of the research that I've heard is that people self reflect reactively rather than proactively. So like when you have something nasty happening to you, or then you sit back and reflect about it. But you don't self-reflect proactively about how was my day yesterday? What did I do well? What was going on in me? So even if you don't like writing, I think having the habit of that self-reflection certainly helps you move forward in growing yourself. The other thing that is critically important, I think, is having quality conversations. Because I learn from reflecting and talking about it and writing about it. Those are the three things. If you at least do two of them, I think you will. uh,
Reflecting, talking, and writing.
Writing.
Yeah, I love that. I think in today's world with our hecticness, and especially when you're talking people who live with, living in the family area, people, kids for me that are 20 to 50, those fit in my realm as kids still. Uh, um, they're so busy with everyday life, they find it difficult time to write, even difficult to ponder, and yet it's just so critical. I don't know how you get where you want to get in life meaningfully, and I'm not sure a lot of people. What do you think? Do you think the majority of population is really trying to live a meaningful life, or they're just trying to get through the day?
Yeah. You know what my estimate was when I was writing Soldier, it gets very deep into all of these things and it requires that you allow yourself the right time to reflect, write, have quality conversations. I said, if I sampled the world, and I've been around the world, probably 3%, 2 to 3% of the people would say, yeah, that's right. One must do that. Probably 50 to 60% of the people won't get near it. Come on, we don't have time. But
I don't
then,
have time for that.
yeah, there's about that other critical mass, the people in between. People are searching, they're looking. People um, feel like they're not having the fulfillment they're looking for, like some void they feel within, and they're searching for ways. And I don't think of this as like everybody has to do the same thing, but people will have to start somewhere. Start, um, you know, thinking about their inner selves, what's happening inside. How can I grow as a human being? Okay, I'm a good professional here, um, but am I growing as a human being? Am I, tapping into all of my? That will happen in everybody's own time and their own schedule, in our own pace, I guess I should say. Um, but yeah, all I thought I could do is I could serve the model, and make it as accessible as possible and try to explain it as best as I can, and then people can, if that resonates, they pick it up. See, this is how soldiery works. Just do one part of it for a year,
Yeah.
maybe two parts of it for a. Just focus on asking better questions. If you do nothing else, give yourself reflection time to say, what kind of questions did I ask in that event? Were they good questions? Did they move anybody's perspective? Did it help solving the problem? How can how can I ask better questions? Should I take a class for that? So like focus on one thing or focus on active listening. I'm going to be a better listener this year. Just that. Look at Soldier. There's like 19 things that it's talked about, but it's a lifelong thing. You don't have to do it all. Just go one at a time, but keep going. And over time, things will sort of start connecting.
I love it. My wife is working right now on a presentation that she's doing to a women's group,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on wisdom. And so she has two practical suggestions. I mean, you could have a dozen, but she just focuses on a certain area for practicing wisdom. And she says she did this without reading your book. She did uh, uh, she did active listening and asking, and she has an adjective in questions, asking generative questions.
Questions, yeah.
But asking, the adjective generative there is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's ones that explore, and she is promoting, and we discuss this. She's promoting the role of curiosity.
Mm.
And if you're going to ask generative questions, she's thinking of exercises, and we talked about how do you teach people to ask generative questions. Those are really generative questions. Is I'm curious. It's like our conversation now. I'm curious what Ahmet Bozer believes. And so
Mm.
all of my notes are just curious. I just,
Mm.
just come in there curious and just ask questions and if you ask curious questions, if you're curious as a listener, you're going to have very active listening because you really give a rip. If you're not curious, you don't give a rip as much. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
curious, you care. And then when you begin to ask generative questions, they come purely from, she says, she wanted to try to create a model. Let me give examples of generative questions. And I said, that kind of helps, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is. It's just about curiosity. Are you curious? And then just go with your curiosity. Even if it doesn't feel like it's right in line or it's just what I want to know. And people, in response to those questions, will want to respond if they know you're curious. If I know, if Ahmet knows I'm curious about Ahmet, you're going to respond because they know I care. If I'm curious,
Absolutely.
it is an indication that I care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And curiosity has its roots in care. And, you can go so deep. It's love for life. It's love for human beings. It's all of that, and it's all interconnected, isn't it?
It certainly is. I'm thinking, we're probably nearing our time, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering at this point, and this is a genuine question because I just want to make sure we've covered things because you have so much to talk about. Is there something I've missed, something that you feel is really important for our audience to know about learning about the inner self and expressing and developing the inner self and expressing the inner self?
Not really, but if you allow me, I'll just give one small anecdote,
Oh,
maybe
please.
to help to make the point. It was 1999. I
Okay.
was working for Coke in Turkey, and I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning with a 7.5 Richter scale earthquake, and it basically destroyed a whole city. And with our company, we immediately mobilized to the earthquake area, taking water and things like that. Where I saw the importance of a strong inner self. You go to a street, same earthquake. Some buildings are standing tall with a little damage, maybe, and some other buildings totally decimated. They
Mm-hmm.
all experience the same external force. Those that were inwardly strong were standing apart. And we are like those physical structures. If our inner self is strong, no matter what the external environment is, whatever changes come our way, whether through technology and everything, building a strong inner self is our best answer to all of that.
I love that. And I so relate because in in some ways, I think I there are many things that are going on in the world, that I read. I'm not a big news watcher, TV news watcher.
Mm,
I have a couple news sources, Axios News online and Free
mhm,
Press, are all like pretty much, those are sort of my news sources.
mhm,
But I get to where when I read the news sources, I put it this way, I don't care.
mm,
There just gets a point that I don't care. And I think because over these years, I've built a stronger infrastructure. And I'm solid in who I am. I'm solid in what my life is. And if Donald Trump or Joe Biden do something, oh, oh well, I mean, I can
mhm,
get all, I could join the crowds and get all upset about it. But I'm at a point where I know it sounds terrible, but I don't care. But I think that's because I'm comfortable with me. I'm comfortable
mhm,
with where my life is, my family. Everything is going reasonably well. Everything's okay. But I
mhm.
like that inner structure. I think that's a wonderful illustration of the
Yeah, yeah,
buildings.
yeah. Yeah, it's the inner peace. Amazing. You see all around the world people living in s- difficult conditions. You see the difference between people who have inner peace and inner wisdom versus those who don't. Some who may be living in much better conditions, but they don't have that inner peace and inner wisdom. That's just something so fundamental to our whatever we are pursuing in life.
Yeah, that is, and that's the goal of soldiery, isn't it?
Yes,
To help people
eventually,
find that.
yeah. I mean, I don't. I think of it as growth. As we grow as human beings, we find fulfillment. And that growth doesn't mean an esoteric thing. it has its ripple effects in whatever we do in life, in our profession, in our families, and all of that. So, yeah, that's what soldiery goes into the foundation of that. So, yes, that's my mother.
Tell her hi.
I will. I will.
You
Yeah.
know, um, it makes me, yeah. I so agree. I'm so with you, Ahmet Bozer. Thank you so much for spending, precious time with me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Charlie. It was so nice talking to you.
That likewise, it's so fun talking to you. This is where I get my fun. This is my,
Excellent.
this is my
Excellent.
fun in life,
It's
learning.
mutual. So,
I took a values assessment one time. It's called VIA character assessment, and it
mhm.
and it gives you it ranks your top 25 values, and then they focus on your five. Two of my five values
Mhm.
were curiosity and love of learning. Those are,
Mhm.
I mean, and that comes with the hardware for me. So that makes what we're talking about much easier because I don't have to invent it or go out and
Mhm.
discover it. It's already in there. It's just, that is who I am. So I feel very fortunate that
Wonderful.
that's part
Wonderful.
of it. Well, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
a
you.
great pleasure for me. And I also want to
Absolutely.
thank you. And I also want to thank everybody for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.